Alright, good evening everyone. Welcome to the new week. Okay, hope you guys had a great weekend. And getting ready for the new week over here, okay? So, as usual, quick disclaimer, housekeeping first. Everything that we'll be covering in today's video is obviously for educational purposes. They do not directly translate to any form of investment advice or trade signals, yeah, because again, everyone would have slightly different risk tolerance, risk management strategy, and I can't account for everyone's approaches. Okay, so take it as a sharing. Okay, take it as me providing some insights, some different opinions, and hopefully those insights are able to help you in your trading. Okay, so for those of you who are new here, what we usually do is I will run through the market, share with you some of the events to take note of. Okay, and then of course running through the markets, highlighting some of the key opportunities that may set up for the week itself. And then we'll quickly see if you guys have any questions. We'll be able to take some questions along the way. All right. So first thing first, let's take a look at the events calendar. Last week was NFP. Pretty interesting reaction from the market. We do have the FOMC last week as well. So it kind of interesting in a way because the Fed has tilted a little bit towards being hawkish. Okay, where they kind of talking about how inflation is picking up, data is good, so they might actually reduce or say push back the rate cut process. But then once they have done that, on Friday NFP data is bad. Okay, I mean it's dropping. Okay, you can see unemployment rate is picking up. Okay, average hourly earnings are dropping. Okay, um, so I think moving forward, right? It's not gonna be so straightforward. It's not gonna be easy for the Fed naturally. Okay, kind of have a bit of like again, tug of war, between inflation and balancing how well the economy is doing, and then balancing the whole expectations from the market as well. But we did get a pretty interesting reaction from prices as well, right? Because the data is actually slightly to the downside. Okay, in other words, a initial reaction would be the dollar would actually be weakened. But we did see let me just very quickly jump chart, right? We did see some reaction off to the downside, but then after that, it kind of like reverse almost within the same day itself, right? Kind of gave us a V-shaped formation on Friday post NFP, right? So that's something interesting, which we'll naturally look into the charts in a while, okay, to share with you what I'm looking at for the week in terms of the dollar, which are some of the key levels in the direction I'll be looking at, okay. So that's something to sum up last week. Now, if you go into this week here, some of the key events to note, including RBA, which is happening tomorrow. And then we have the Bank of England, okay, on Thursday, and then the Canadian labor data on Friday, right? So these are the three key data that you definitely want to be aware of for this week. Okay, now RBA and BOE obviously we're gonna create some kind of potential volatility on those specific news. You wouldn't want to do news trade on those. Okay, I always say like rate statement often follow with press conferences, and it's very difficult to trade the news trading strategy of this event. However, on Friday we do have the Canadian labor market data over here. The Canadian labor market data is actually a very useful, and I would say very easy, right? News that you can utilize to do news trade. For those of you who have traded the NFP, okay, kind of similar technique and approach. Just that from my personal experience, the Canadian labor market data often give us a cleaner break. Okay, not so much of a whipsaw, but when the news comes out, it often gives a very clean move. Right. So for those of you into news trading this week, naturally the Canadian data is the one that you want to emphasize and be attentive of. Okay. So of course, with that in mind, some of the opportunities that we may come across involving the Aussie, involving the pound, you want to take note of the news releases combined with technicals. Okay. Yeah. So that's the take on this, right? So let me very quickly now jump into the charts to talk a little bit about the technical aspect of some of these instruments over here. Okay. We're gonna start off with the dollar index. Okay, so for me, dollar index, at least from last week, the entire build up, very obvious the market is coming down. Okay, and this is coming down with momentum, right? So at least for the near term, right, I would say within this week going into next week, maybe the first half of May, we'll be looking at potential sell side of the dollar. Okay, now given if we can get a corrective pullback this week, going into maybe later part Thursday and Friday, if we get a corrective pullback, then we may get a sell opportunity within this week going into next week, right? So key areas that I'm monitoring, if we can get a pullback, will be somewhere back towards 105.5, 105.7. That would present a sell opportunity area. And the target here will be where the previous low is, right? That will give you around 103.90, 103.80. Now the invalidation level for this here is going to be at 106.50, which means price ideally needs to stay below 106.50 for us to have this analysis being valid, right? So moving forward, at least in the near term, as I mentioned, we'll be bearish on the dollar itself. Okay, so that kind of gives us an overarching perspective on some of the major pairs that we'll be looking in. Okay, so euro dollar, I'm neutral right now. Okay, let me explain very quickly why. Okay, so euro dollar over here, what we're seeing is, first off, on the surface, very quickly, you'll be seeing this as a corrective pullback, right? We kind of complete a very nice little fit area as well, so we have an impulse three-wave pullback. Ideally, we will be just looking for sell. Okay, but what I'm looking at on the euro dollar, instead of like being just bearish bias, I'm actually neutral and patient here because of the dollar, right? So this is where the understanding of market correlation can give you an additional insights. Okay, so euro dollar, if you kind of take it independently, we'll be expecting this to come down, right? Potentially retest the previous low. However, for euro dollar to come down, obviously we want the dollar to be stronger, right? But if you take a look back at the dollar index, yes, in the near term, we may be expecting some kind of a dollar pullback to the upside, but the overarching direction of bias on the dollar is the downside, right? So this is the part where I kind of put them together and say, okay, I may not want to be overly bearish on the euro. Yes, the euro may have some reaction over here, proven otherwise, right? Which means overall, I'm gonna be a little bit cautious, and I will want to give it sufficient time to prove, okay, to me, that it has that commitment of coming down, and perhaps then the dollar analysis will need to shift a little bit. Okay? So this is a very good case study and example of looking at individual charts at the same time combining the understanding of market correlation to give us an additional perspective of how we're gonna deal with it. Okay, so euro dollar over here, I'm just gonna give it maybe another 1 or 2 days, see how the market is gonna react off here. If the market pullback is corrective, I won't be interested in the sell side. We'll be looking at upside instead. Okay, because from Elliott wave pattern, right? This can be a low, this can be a 1 and 2, right? This can be a leading diagonal, this can be a 1 and 2, and then this can be a start of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to give us our third wave. Okay, so we are very dynamic in terms of how the wave can develop. Okay, so we just at the end of the day want to focus back on how price is developing, right? Is it impulsive? Is it corrective? That's gonna give us that understanding, and moving forward, how we're gonna plan out. Okay, so euro dollar, not too much on that. Pound dollar is something that I would pay a little bit more attention over here. Okay, so pound dollar, what we're seeing here is that we had a impulsive push to the upside. Okay, after the low has been established around 1.2300. And of course, this is crawlish in nature, right? So short term, I'm actually expecting a pullback towards the 50 and 618. And I'll see this as a leading diagonal, right? So if we're gonna put in some label over here, we're gonna probably do something like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and that would be a leading diagonal structure, and we're expecting a three-wave pullback, and then after which we'll look for another buy. Okay, so this week I'm looking out for opportunities to see if I can get a sell. Okay, now just now we kind of highlight the overview of the events calendar, right? We have the pound, Bank of England coming in on Thursday. So that is going to build into maybe utilizing the Bank of England news as a potential catalyst to get involved in the pound dollar trade into the downside. Okay. So you can combine a little bit of all these things together, right? So that's where like understanding of fundamentals, understanding of how data releases impacts the market prices, and then looking at the technicals to give us that precision in price point and timing. Okay, so that's a combination of a couple of things in the market. So GBP USD over here, short term. Okay, I'll be interested to see if we can get a sell towards 1.2460, 1.2430 for this week itself, and then if the market comes down, we see some kind of a rejection of the zone, then going into next week, we'll be looking at a buy side. Okay, so short term, selling, looking out for sell opportunity in the pound dollar, and then going into next week, longer term, maybe we're looking at a buy side after that. Okay, moving on into some of the major pairs, Aussie dollar over here, I'm bullish. Okay, the market seems to have broken out of this trend line as of now. Very impulsive move to the upside as well. But I would love to see some kind of a corrective pullback before committing to the buy, right? So key areas here I'm looking out for is around 6,550, 6,530. Okay, and of course, ideally price should maintain above 6,460. Okay, so same thing here. If you get a corrective pullback, we'll be looking at a buy trade opportunity to the upside. Hey, this is kind of in line with the dollar index, right? Dollar index here, we're looking at potential short-term downside, right? Bearishness on the dollar, and therefore some of this major pairs confluence. Okay. Bear in mind, tomorrow we have RBA as well. So if the market just basically U-turn coming back down very fast, then you want to be careful, right? You don't just want to buy because the market comes back at the fit. You always want to understand how the price develop, okay? Not just the key level, but also how the market approaches those key levels. Those are very important principle. Okay, dollar Canadian here, I'm also bearish, right? Okay, kind of very nice confluence with the dollar as a whole. Okay, but I would love to see some kind of a pullback in tree, right? So we have first move, seems like it's doing a second move. This might develop the third move going into maybe, I would say Wednesday. Give it another 2 days, we may see that. Right, if you can get that, then it's a very nice little confluence, right? We have this impulsive move, tree wave correction into the fib area, into the top of the channel. Couples of factors coming in. Then we'll be looking at the short-term sell. Okay, so key areas for potential sell zone is around 1.3690, 1.3720. Those are the fib, 50 and 618. Price needs to maintain below the invalidation level at 1.3785. And my target for this trade here potentially is back towards 1.3570. Okay, so this might develop something into Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, so keep an eye on this as well, right? Next up, we have the dollar yen. In fact, all of the yen pairs over here, my take is I'm just going to be neutral. The market on the yen has been a little bit more volatile recently. Again, with potential Bank of Japan coming in as an intervention and things like that. Right now, I'm suggesting, the price patterns on the yen pairs are just not going to be nice. So you probably just want to give it another week, which is this week itself, maybe, the entire of this week. You probably just want to leave it aside, let the market develops its thing, develop into a clearer pattern before we come back. Okay, so the yen pairs, probably just avoid it. Then we have gold. Gold seems to be breaking out as of now. Okay, so what I'm looking at here for gold here is potentially buy side. Okay, bullish bias. Okay, now fundamentally, and then from a macro perspective, I'm bullish on gold. Okay, in the long run as well. And then right now over here, what we're seeing is that gold may have completed a three-wave development. Okay, with the third wave here as a potential ending diagonal, right? So kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little bit of a crawlish pattern, so we're expecting, the move to come back up. Now, whether this is just going to be a first bigger move and then a corrective move and another move back down, we don't know for now. But I would say if we can get a breakout with momentum today or tomorrow, and then following that we get a corrective pullback, okay, short term we can still catch one more move up. Okay, now if the market actually just breaks higher than that, then great, right? You probably just want to manage that trade itself. But short term at least, we will expect one more push up. We'll probably take some partial profits, manage the trade, etc. If the market decides to develop into correction over here, then there is that possibility of a bigger move back down, right? And then we'll be capitalizing on that again. Okay, so we'll need to definitely kind of monitor how the market develops over time, right? But as of today, this is what I'm looking at. Okay, so short term here, at least we can still look for upside, perhaps building into even the longer term positions, right? Depending on how market's going to develop. Okay, so that's on goal. Ideally, the invalidation price point here is 2276, so price ideally needs to maintain above that low, okay, for us to maintain that bullishness. Okay, so keep an eye on gold. This is another one that may set up, somewhere around mid-week. Okay. Crude oil, nothing much over here. I'm neutral because the price is basically testing this. Okay, 78.60. We have a little bit of a crawlish environment here as well, right? If you go down to the hourly, you'll be able to see that as a crawl. Okay, very clear crawl pattern development. So again, we are potentially gonna look for a buy opportunity given if the market can break out of this crawl impulsively, right? I think by tomorrow we'll know. Okay, so the 4-hour chart here, if you can get one impulsive move, then we'll wait for a correction and we'll look for upside. Very straightforward, very simple pattern, right? 3 wave to the downside, completed around 100%. We'll see how the market react. Early sign of an impulse correction combination will give us a short-term upside potential trade. Okay. So again, this one maybe going into tomorrow or Wednesday, we'll get clarity on it. Okay. S&P bullish, but of course, I think over here, you don't want to buy in immediately. You probably want to wait for some kind of a pullback before jumping into the buy trade itself. Okay. So bullish on this, and we just wait for the correction. Okay, then we'll look for a trade to the upside. So target as of now is somewhere around 5200. Okay, but you also want to be careful as when the market is reaching up here, and we start to see that overall it's still respecting this channel very nicely, then there's a good possibility this may come back down and break the slow, right? So kind of give you that 1, 2, 3. But I think for now you don't need to worry on that first, right? Because I think short term, probably a little bit more upside, and then depending on how the market is going to develop for this week, maybe next week on Monday we'll come back and take a look again. Okay, I'll skip the yen. There's really nothing there on the yen pairs. Pound odd neutral as well. Okay, the reason is because the market is essentially right now testing some key areas, completed the market structure as well, so we'll just wait. Okay, so nothing there. Again, we want to see how the market is going to respond. On here, react around the zone before we kind of commit to the direction. EuroCAD, I'm also shifting towards neutral. The idea here is the market is, just consolidating, right? So I'll just let it do its thing. Maybe come back in the future and see how it goes. Okay. Very quick one, Bitcoin. Okay, we kind of get a pretty impulsive bounce, right, from the low around 56,900 level. So if I can get a pullback here, right, now the market seems to be developing a first pullback candle. Okay, so very, very early stage, but if I were to put in the FIB around that 50 and 618, okay, so if you can get a market to pull back correctively towards like 61,500 to 60,500 zone, that would present a decent buy opportunity for Bitcoin. Okay, now price target here, obviously, there is that opportunity where Bitcoin prices can break all-time high. Okay, so as you are trading on Bitcoin, maybe you also want to factor in a long-term position. Okay, just simply manage your stop, trade your stop, and then you have partial take profits, but at the same time leaving some position of yours in profits, and then trail it as far as it can goes. Okay, so Bitcoin here we're bullish. If you can get a pullback, I think by Wednesday or Thursday, we may get a clue as to whether this pullback is corrective itself, right? And then that's where the opportunity will come in, maybe on Friday or even next week, early next week. Okay. Another one that you want to potentially keep an eye on is the Ethereum. Okay, slightly different perspective from Bitcoin because Ethereum right now is testing that 618. Okay, but the price development you can see on Bitcoin is impulsive to the upside, right? But Ethereum over here, as it approaches the 618, it seems to be developing into a crawl. It seems to be struggling to break through. And therefore there's a good possibility this will actually come back down, retest around maybe this 2600 level, right? 2600 level, to kind of complete this entire channel structure. Okay, so if you're into Ethereum, okay, you may want to consider maybe some short-term sell opportunity. Okay, now I'm still waiting for some bit of confirmation. Of course, we have this 1 hour impulsive drop. If you can get a corrective pullback here, that's a decent setup. Ideally, is to wait for price to break that swing low first, right? If you can, continue a momentum a little bit more and then only does its correction, that will be a little bit better. But of course, if it starts to do a correction over here, it's still potentially a valid trade. Okay, because this is definitely a crawl development, right? So that's on Ethereum for those of you into cryptocurrencies as well. Now, very quickly jump into some of the global indices. Okay, S&P, we kind of talk about that. NASDAQ, kind of similar. Okay, both are bullish. The German DAX over here hasn't really tagged the 100%. Okay, so I'm actually a little bit cautious as well, right? Can this develop, this three wave be done and this goes higher? Yep, but seldom. Okay, so there's a good possibility this will probably come back and retest this. Okay, so for German DAX, if you're interested in looking out for this opportunity, I would suggest you can keep an eye on the price area around 17850. Okay, if you can get a corrective pullback towards 17850, then that would be an area to look for a potential buy trade. Okay, so that's on the German DAX. The FTSE, okay, seems to develop a little bit of a crawlish nature. Of course, we have the Bank of England coming in as well this week. My take is wait for a pullback before getting involved in the buy. Okay, so the pullback may come back towards this zone here, right, where you can see some structural confluences. So this week, maybe you might look at a short-term sell, but if you're overall in the macro perspective of index, right, then you may want to wait for the pullback and then look for the buy instead. Okay, A50 bullish as well, but I would say you always want to wait for the pullback. You don't want to get involved at a high price, right? Okay, it's never ideal to jump in at a buy at a high price, right? Always wait for the pullback. Okay, so this one here, probably nothing much for the week itself. I don't think you want to be selling this pullback. You don't get a clear retracement or reversal pattern yet. Okay, so this one, nothing there. Hang Seng, very impulsive move as well, so really nothing there. Just stay neutral, wait for the market to develop some kind of a confirmation, whether is it a pullback, is it a crawl, just wait it out. Okay, yeah, so those are the few things that I have on the table right now. Okay, not a lot ongoing as of today, but there are some potential ones that you can have it in your hot list, okay, and keep them at watch, because never know, right? Wednesday or Thursday, the setup might come to us, and then that's where the opportunity presents itself. All right, okay. So yeah, I hope up to now everything is clear. Generally, those are the things that I have on my list. Sharing with you the overview of some of the markets instrument over here. Just quick one. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in. Okay, give you guys a couple of minutes. See if you guys have any questions. We'll address those questions. If not, then we'll call it a day for today's session over here. Okay, so for those of you who have any questions, just feel free to put it in the chat. I'll be able to answer. Okay, share us for the Aussie 200 and the SWI, right? So let me just add this into the list. Good. Okay, so okay, so Aussie 200 seems like this analysis that we've done last week remains pretty much intact. Okay, so short term here we'll probably continue to see a little bit more upside. But again, you want to be very, very careful, because you can see this entire development seems corrective in nature as of now, right? Even if this internal is impulsive, the overall development is pretty much in a consolidation, right? So be cautious when the price approaches around the zone. There's a good possibility we may see another dip. Okay. So short term, you may still look for an upside, right, I would say, but once it tagged this area around 77.40, just be a bit careful and see how price is going to react off that zone. Okay. Because again, this looks overall something like that, so I'm not surprised if this actually come back and retest this low. Okay, that's a possibility of happening. Switzerland side, okay, again, very consolidated right now. So probably not the best one to be focusing at the moment, right? Because this is essentially doing its consolidation. And it's going to be a little bit complex because from an Elliott wave point of view, okay, something like that can develop into double tree, triple tree, and things like that. So this can actually go up, come down, then go back up, tag this high, and then starts going down. Or this can easily also comes back down. Okay, tag this, goes back up, tag this, and then starts to come down and go back. There are many different possibilities. Okay, so for now, since this is developing and we are kind of getting a consolidated phase, my take is probably just avoid the Swiss index at the moment. Okay, so kind of like, something like, this here you probably want to avoid, right? Give it time. Hang Seng as well. So I think the Swiss kind of falls into that category. Okay. Okay. Tian here asks about the pound franc. Let me very quickly drop to the pound franc chart. Okay, good. Pound franc kind of seems to have like reacted quite nicely to our previous analysis. Good. Now for me, I would have certain guidelines to guide me in my view, right? So what I see over here is obviously we have a crawl, and our market reacted to the crawl very nicely, impulsively to the downside as well. And then for me, I have this thing called the three wave principle, right? So I can't expect the market to develop in sets of three. So this is one. So obviously the pullback would be two. And then we'll be expecting one more drop, right? So given if the pullback develops correctively, right? So of course it's a if then condition, right? If the market develops correctively, of course we can start to pull a little bit of fit for reference point. Okay. If the market can pull back correctively towards the area at 1.1420, 1.1440, then that opens up an opportunity to get a sell trade. Okay. Now this sell trade here, of course, we also need to factor in the possibility that it's probably just doing a pullback from this move, or at the same time, this may be the top, and we may see bigger downside. Okay, but this becomes the first level that you want to keep an eye on, right? 1.13. Okay, so that's my take, right? I think this week here, if you're looking at potential corrective structure, then you have a sell opportunity. Okay, that's what I'll be looking out for if I'm looking at this pair. Okay. Silver, probably quite similar to gold. It's just that this one here, instead of a diagonal structure, silver maybe just kind of a little bit of a double bottom-ish. Okay, so I would say very similar to gold. Short term, maybe a little bit more upside, but of course, depending on how the market develops, we may get one more push down. Okay, so silver may not be the cleanest for now, right? I think gold may be a little bit nicer in terms of the setup and the structure development. Silver not as clean in terms of how the price is developing as compared to gold. Okay, but understand that these two commodities are pretty much correlated, right? They kind of move in a kind of similar direction overall. Okay. Good. Dio here asks for Aussie franc. I see Sunajo question whether Elliott wave is valid or invalid. Yeah, can you maybe give me a chart, right, so we can talk about that. So that we can then talk about which one you are referring to as valid or invalid. Okay, so back to Dio's question. Quick one here on Aussie franc. Seems like this is developing crawlish to retest this top area right now. I wouldn't be buying this, right? Obviously, with this crawl, with all the resistance at the top, I will only consider buying if the market able to break out with momentum, impulsive, and then a pullback. Until that happens, we are still in the resistance zone. You want to still focus on downside probability, right? But of course, getting involved in the sell right now can be quite aggressive. A more conservative approach is to wait for an impulsive break, then the pullback, and then you take the sell down. Okay, so that's one way to look out for. Alternatively, you can go down to the lower time frame and look for a breakout trade opportunity, right? So again, you can see on the lower time frame, we kind of zoom in here. Okay, you have a little bit of crawl development, right? So if you're aggressive in your entry, you can even consider a breakout that looks something like that, right? Okay, so that's a pretty tight stop, right? Kind of looking at maybe about 20 pip, 25 pip or so. Okay, and then your target, of course, you can have multiple targets. With this low here, give you a risk to reward ratio of 2 if you target all the way at that zone. Okay, that opens up a pretty nice little risk to reward ratio. Okay, so again, depending on your style, right, how you're gonna execute that trade varies. Okay, but I think the direction right now is probably focusing on the downside. Okay, unless we break out impulsively, as I mentioned. Okay, good. So generally that's about it from my side. I hope I can answer your questions as well, giving you some insights into what some of the things to look out for the week. Okay, what are opportunities available as well. Okay, so good. That's all from me. All the best for this week. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Okay, so see you guys. All the best. See you guys next time. Bye bye.